Extend a warm welcome to everybody. We have a couple of people coming into the public forum in the gallery this morning, so looking forward to hearing from them, but also NZTA staff as well. Angela and Martin, welcome, and a warm welcome to everyone online. So we will start, please, with Karakia.
Kina ki uta, kia matara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atukura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, ti he mauri ora.
Thank you, Phil. It should nicely set us up for the day. Okay, we'll start with apologies. I have apologies from Rodney Dow. We will have representation from Andrew Barker, but we'll put apologies in for lateness for now. Are there any others? Maybe Peter Revel will put apologies in for lateness as too. Otherwise, I think we are, everyone else is here. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Yeah, thank you, Alvisa, and thank you, Ash. Second, all in favour? Carried. Right, confirmation of the agenda this morning. We'll keep it as is. A mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ray. All in favour? Carried. Any disclosures of members' interests? Looking around the room, there are none. Thank you. Okay, we'll head straight into the public forum. Natasha, are you happy to go first? Right, if you just come up to the front there, and you're going to talk to us about some of the Te Waihau safety issues, Blue Springs specifically, I think. So look, yeah, very warm welcome to you. I know it can be a bit scary actually sitting up the front sometimes, so you're feeling...
I've been waiting a long time for this.
Oh, no, brilliant. And I understand you're...
I'm friendly, but
I understand
it's a very important subject for me.
Yeah, and you're a local resident, so you're speaking from your first-hand experience. So look, again, warm welcome. So look, we'll let you lead through. We've got some photographs as well, folks, on the
unfortunately the videos, I'm technically challenged, so the videos haven't come through, but just want you to just take note of these pictures. They're just a tiny snippet of, there's only about 4 that have come through to highlight the need that we have to make change on Highway 28.
Okay, thanks, Natasha. Right, I'll hand over to you.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here to encourage an urgent speed reduction review for Highway 28, or better known as Whites Road, in the South Waikato district of Putaruru. In particular, a 2-kilometre stretch, 1 kilometre either side of Leslie Road intersection. And it's great to see NZTA here. So that's that, Andrew. Yes, thank you. Yep, it is great. I have tried numerous emails and contact avenues to speak with NZTA with no effect. So it's great to have you here. I just want to just quickly let you know how important today's meeting is for me. I have a 100-year-old grandmother that I'm doing respite care for. I don't get to see her very often, and I'm doing this so family can go to Australia to see their children. So every day I have with her over these last 2 weeks have been a privilege for me. So I've given up 1 day of that privilege to be here today. That's how important today is. Someone's looking after her though. So in saying that, I'll just read because I have quite a bit to share. So Whites Road is a major pathway leading to the famous Blue Springs walkway. Our family have lived here for well over a decade now. New statistics show visitor numbers have exploded to 100,000 plus visitors a year, possibly more. South Waikato District Council, social media posts and New Zealand tourism have influenced visitor numbers to the point that serious road health and safety measures must be actioned with great urgency. We live near the busy intersection where visitors turn off Whites Road onto Leslie Road. This intersection, as you will see in the photos, has outgrown its standard turning bays and speed limit recommendations. And the actual turning bay, where you'll see the ambulance picture up there, is not even wide enough for a standard vehicle to pull on off to turn into Leslie Road. Whites Road is currently a 100-kilometre speed zone. The 2 access points to the Blue Springs car parks, which there are 2 car parks, are off Whites Road, or Highway 28. Whether approaching east or west from Whites Road, Highway 28, each car park turn-off is at the end of a downhill grade, where vehicles generally pick up speed. And it's great to see Mike Kerr here today. I wasn't expecting to see you, so Mike Kerr is very well known with the issues we have on this road as well. The majority of visitors are relying on GPS directions and focus on this rather than speed reduction and turning upon approach. Suddenly brakes are hauled on and those behind are struggling to stop on this 100-kilometre road. Sometimes tourist cars come to a complete stop on this highway, as you'll see in the photos. Many accidents have happened, some reported, some not, after swift and dangerous getaways. Tow trucks, ambulances and police have attended, and yet speed is still the same. U-turns in front of 2 trailer trucks that unknowingly come around blind spots, only to try slow the heavy vehicles from causing a potential fatality. The main reason being drivers not slowing down, inadequate pullover bays, poor signage and lack of awareness. The giveaway sign has been knocked down more times than I can remember, and as of today, that sign has been, since I've been back to come and speak here, that sign is down on the ground again. Also the sign on the Highway Act 28, which is the Leslie Road sign. So that's as it is today as well. That was taken months ago. Two separate incidences 2 weeks apart where cars became airborne, crossing over the opposite lane and landing near our fence line 10 metres from the roadside. All because they missed their turn off onto Leslie Road and speed was a factor and distraction of their GPS. Also, I'd just like to note that the last roadworks done at this intersection, there's a bit of a ledge where you can see at the top of that line there, a ledge has been, because of the layers of the road new asphalt, it's been lifted up. So it's almost like a launch point for those putting their foot down. And that has been a cause. So cars have actually, just at the bottom of that picture there, there's a ditch. So cars have actually been airborne over that twice. Thankfully, nobody was on the opposite lane. Leslie, hang on, sorry. Whites Road car park is a blind spot from either direction and overflows particularly over the summer peak or long weekends, whether summer or winter. Families with young children parked on the 100-kilometre highway, walking up to 100 metres to this Blue Spring walkway. Someone is about to die, and you can reduce that chance today. I encourage you to act swiftly to reduce speed to a minimum of 60 kilometres, 1 kilometre either side of Leslie Road intersection at the minimum. Please consult with the residents if needed. We are all living daily with horns blaring to alert drivers, especially from the large freight line trucks, as you all know, take longer to slow down. One neighbour beside Highway 28 car park has lost count of how many times the fence has been repaired, mostly due to speed. The road has simply outgrown its safety requirements with the influx of visitors, similar to that of the neighbouring rural Hobbiton roads. Please hear my plea and those that bear these dangers daily. And I just want to read, I've got a written statement, personal statement from the Deputy Fire Chief. From myself, our issue, the road of Whites Road. The road gets narrow from illegal parking to cars parked half on the road, meaning extra time for response and nowhere for normal traffic to yield for us. Also, so many cars are more focused on entering or exiting that they just pull out, flick around or just slam on the anchors. We have also encountered many walking along the road. This will not end well. Initial actions needs to be a 30-kilometre zone followed by a more permanent plan. I don't know how it's not happened, but it's not a matter of if an accident will happen, it's a matter of when. We will be washing the road of human remains, maybe a kid, maybe an adult, or maybe an entire family, who knows, or cutting multiple people from vehicles, same difference. Where else in New Zealand do you get away with a tourist attraction on a state highway with next to no safety entryways or roadside parking of hundreds of cars, and they are in the hundreds, sometimes thousands, that they've actually gone over the bridge, which is probably from the Highway 28 car park, is probably at least 200 metres. They've gone parked over the bridge, up around to Leslie Road. And it's just been insane. There's been tourist buses as well at times.
Look, thank you, Natasha. Is there? I don't want to cut you short, but I think yeah,
Pretty much covered everything.
Your
so,
point has been well made, and I think quite widely mentioned in media and things over the last few years as well.
nothing's been done.
But nothing has been done. Absolutely. Okay.
Except some red road markers, which people just used as a way to protect their cars.
Yeah.
So they pulled them out, put them back in.
Yeah, look, we will follow this up. Oh, Andrew's just given you his card. Love that. So we will follow this up as well. Oh.
So will you commit to giving me a response if I email this one? Awesome, thank you. Are there any questions?
Sorry, yeah, so we won't have time to do questions, but certainly I think your key point of contact will be Andrew in terms of the fact that it's a state highway. So, but hey, look, thanks Natasha for coming today. I think you'll find you'll get some quite some proactive.
I hope so, because I'm back to Karakia grammar, so I've come all the way here today just for this. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for that. Right, we'll ask Graham to come through again. We've got a slightly different, but same part of the world in Tito. Graham is a chair of the community board, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Yes, good morning, everyone. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. And I'm here today to basically support the need for a pedestrian traffic control system at our pedestrian crossing in KiwiRail. And as probably most of you know, and long weekends, public holidays, we get queues of traffic up to 5 k's out of town. And it's basically caused by the pedestrian crossing. The pedestrian crossing, and just briefly, if I could just say, pedestrian crossing 4 or 5 years ago was placed right down the very northern end of town by the school. And at that stage, when they shifted it, there was only 6 children a day using the pedestrian crossing. Because all people today take their kids in the car to school. So in their wisdom, they shifted it up right outside the information centre and all the dog, as we know it in KiwiRail. And that in itself has created a large problem. We have also at the information centre, we have the toilets. The toilets are another problem we have in KiwiRail, major problem. You got to remember, if I can just say that in Auckland International Airport, there is 5 Chinese flights a day coming in. And a lot of those people take their respective tours and they come through KiwiRail, being the first town off the motorway. And their first stop is our toilets. And that's right outside the pedestrian crossing. And I've sat down in my car and watched this, what happens. And no disrespect to the Chinese visitors, they hop out of the bus, some of them go to the toilet where there's usually a queue, and the others filter across the road one by one. State Highway 1 starts to bank up. They take all their photos of the dog and the sheep and then waddle back across the road, and this goes on. They get on the bus, they've gone in 20 minutes, they've gone out of town. And then next thing, another bus is arriving in. So we get between 5 and 12 buses a day from the Chinese airlines. And then on top of that, you've got your intercity buses and the other tourist buses. So it's a major problem area. So we've got to have something to restrict these people just dawdling across the road. How it's done, I'm not sure. Traffic lights with a controller on to restrict them. The real issue long term has got to be something else. I fully understand that, and maybe it's a up and over top with a lift on each side. Keep that traffic moving. And I would suggest that probably 50 to 60% of the hold-ups is caused by the people dawdling across the road. The other 20% is people driving down the street looking for parks, slowing up the traffic. That's another big problem. And probably 10% is too many cars in a confined area. So just to the short term, in the next few years, I think we've got to have that traffic lights with a controller on it.
Thank you, Graham. I think your message has been well explained. I think you might be, the success of Tito over the last few years is to be commended, but it of course has those unintended consequences as well. Yeah. So I can appreciate the quandary you're in. So this is another issue for NZTA. So what we're thinking perhaps is just to ensure that we get an appropriate response to both of the presenters today is, Andrew, if you'll be quite happy to provide an update maybe at our next RTC meeting as to what NZTA's thoughts are on both of the issues. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll obviously take that offline in between now and then with both presenters too. They're not unknown issues to me, so we'd love to chat further.
Yeah. Does that satisfactory, Graham? So we're at our next RTC meeting, we'll have a formal response tabled here. But in the meantime, Angel and yourselves no doubt have some conversations. Thanks for your attendance today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that is the conclusion of our public forum. So we'll just now move to our next item, which is our minutes from the 9th of March. For those that were in attendance, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, that those minutes are true and accurate? Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, Alvisa. All in favour? Carried. Thanks, everybody. Right, we'll move on to our director's report. I'll hand over to you, Phil.
Thank you. So I have Lorraine coming up to present the report to you.
Morning, Lorraine. Hope you're well. Thanks for Well, we will open up for questions once you've completed your opening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies for just a little bit slow today. Just to generally take the director's report as read, and just to highlight that there's a short section on local government reform that is an update, also provides a little bit of information and sort of just the cost and staff equivalent of the work that we do here at the Regional Council that you might want to take back to your respective councils for your considerations, that I'm sure in full swing for your approach to local government reform. There's information on Budget 2026, which probably would be well across by now as well. It was just coming out as we were finalising the agenda, but obviously the Cambridge to Periri new road of national significance and the resilience funding. And there's a bit of a flavour to the agenda today because we've got a few reports on some of our lifeline routes and some of the resilience issues that we're having. And it'll probably come up in some of the reports from NZTA and some of the other parties. We also have an interim road safety update, which is primarily on the agenda to address some of the information that was requested at the last full road safety update in relation to the types of vehicles that are involved in crashes, and where we have that information. Also included is again some letters that were exchanged prior to the budget announcement on the Lifelines routes from the chair to Minister Bishop, and then Minister Bishop's response again. That was before the budget. But there is also a discussion specifically on State Highway 3 Awakino Gorge on the agenda ahead of the Working Party meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lorraine. Look, and I guess just in regards to the 2026 budget, just want to acknowledge the mayors who really, from the region, all supported, that letter to Chris Bishop in regards to attempting to prioritise for our region, the Awakino area, but also Coromandel. So that was an extremely successful outcome, I'm sure, but really that was largely due to the mayors really uniting and showing, I guess, really strong leadership. So the outcome, I think, was very, very good. Right, Sue, I'll pass to you for queries, questions.
Can we do
comments?
this again? Do I have to push this?
You're okay to roll
Oh,
now.
good.
Yeah, you got a light on, you're good.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil and Lorraine, for the report. I have a few questions from it, if I can be indulged for that. First one is around budget 26, and there were two items that you were seeking some more information on, I think, when you wrote the report, and I'd be interested if there's been any update on them. The first is the role, the transport for the funding for transport for Auckland, for rail, sorry, in Auckland, and how it affects freight and passenger services for the Waikato. And the second one on the budget would be about the critical fuel price pressures funding, and any more information that you have to offer on that since the report was written.
So,
Phil?
Madam Chair, Lisa from KiwiRail is going to be dialing into the meeting to present her report later, so maybe she could respond to the budget question around rail specifically. The fuel topic didn't include much detail, and we haven't been able to get much since.
Right.
But we understand there is a fund that government has allocated to, as the words say, support local authorities with the local share cost impacts of the fuel increase issue, on top of what they're doing through the National Land Transport Fund for the NZTA share. But we don't know how much, and we don't know how it will be accessed.
Right. And do you know, is it part of the phasing process, or is it over and above that?
Details still to come. We don't have that detail. I mean, budget has only just been announced. Really, it takes a long time for things to filter through, as you'll probably remember as well. Yeah, but you know, positive for the Waikato and positive in regard to PT for that fuel.
Thank you. Any idea when we might know what that either of those things look like? Very difficult for planning going forward, really, isn't it? So my other question is really, so thank you for, because it was a request from me at the last meeting about having the data around trucks as a vehicle class and their involvement in deaths and serious injuries. So it's really great to see that that's been provided, and it looks like it was data that we can easily add into the dashboard for future full reports. How often do we have? So first of all, I want to test that is what I just said accurate, and secondly, how often do we get to see that very full report that we had at the last hui, which we delved quite a lot into accidents and deaths and what is involved in those.
So I understand that they have been presented previously twice a year. However, if the committee wants to change that, we could look at putting it on for each meeting. So it would be every second meeting, there'd be a full report, okay, and then an interim in between. But if there was a special request, we could look at that.
And can the data on trucks be incorporated in that going forward?
I understand we can with the data that we've presented. There's a couple of bits missing, but it's much fuller with the information that we've got now. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sue. All right, if there are no other questions, then, oh, Jeanette, sorry.
I'm sorry, probably not so much a question, but more a commentary about, on page 25, we're talking about factors influencing a speed limit change. And I just have to speak out in general about how frustratingly long this process is, even for the most common sense of changes on local roads. We're talking in this paper here, noting that it's 8 to 12 months once an application's been put in. We in the Waitoma district have a situation where on top of that 8 to 12 months, it had already had a long process to get through to our speed management plan, which then of course was removed by the change of government, and then a second round of consultation with the same people, and then been told another 8 to 12 months on top of it. And it is just, it's nonsensical.
Thank you, Jeanette. A frustration that isn't new, of course, has been around for some time. Andrew, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, it is what it is. Unfortunately, the legislation and the processes that we need to follow are set ultimately by government, and we can't speed that up at the moment in any other way unless there is a change.
Are we able to advocate to central government in any way? Because this really doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't make any sense on the state highways, as we've heard from Natasha today. It just, is there any way that we can advocate more strongly?
It's something for the committee to consider, but you know, we've got a deep dive today on time of use and tolling. I would suggest a deep dive on speed as well would be potentially useful before you go down that route, just to understand how the process works and how you might be able to influence it.
Thank you.
That's probably good advice, actually. Mike.
Yeah, so just following along on that particular topic, I mean, for me, I feel this committee's one of its jobs is to advocate for change. This doesn't work, this system. It's, you know, like I see in the list of sites that are currently on the table, Waikato doesn't have any, including Airport Road, which we've been chasing for years to get that speed reduced. It's not right, and it's unsafe, and it's not even on the list. And look, it's not from lack of trying. So, and we've, you know, had residents, we've had our local community committee raise it. Natasha just highlighted the issue, and the problem seems to come down to New Zealand operating in silos, and NZTA is one of those. And it's got these processes that it's driven by. This committee can advocate for changing that process and making it more sensible and simpler. Like NZTA has to stop operating as a silo. And I'll look at the WTR application in our ward, you know, the Waikato Thoroughbred Racing. At the moment, it won't have a highway connection to that if that goes ahead, which is completely crazy. Again, it's everyone's operating in silos here, and it doesn't fit and suit New Zealand.
So, Mike, you have been around as long as I have. So, we've been through this, and we've changed a number of roads, including Airport Road from memory. Many roads we changed, and then it all got reversed again. No. So we didn't actually see the outcome, but it got reversed through changes of government along the way. So the process is flawed for sure, but it's not through lack of action. It's just we are sometimes party to changes at high levels that we just essentially cannot,
we
influence.
should have influence in those setting those processes. That's where the Regional Transport Committee, if we're going to send recommendations, they should have, you'd think, some weight, and it should be influential. So that, to me, that's our job here, to try and fix this situation that does not currently work.
Okay, all right. Andrew, would you like to comment on that? Because I just want to remind everyone that the speed management review was about 4 or 5 years ago, was very comprehensive across the region, across New Zealand. So Andrew, can you comment on that,
I hear the
please?
frustrations, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, Mike. I just think the committee needs to be careful to pick what it can actually have influence over in the short term that you sit as a regional transport committee. Looking back to the last triennium, the success of the advocacy of the RTC in getting a speed reduction in total against the legislative tide at the time was a success. The advocacy you've just shown with regard to Awakino, State Highway 25, Coromandel, I see that as a success in what's come through in budget 2026 as well. So you're right, this committee does have a role. It's just about picking it at the right time, what you want to advocate for.
Just add to that, one of the key strategic pillars of our current regional land transport plan is the huge overrepresentation of road safety trauma for this region. And based on the work that you've already done to frame up the next regional land transport plan, that remains. And we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through the meeting. But that pillar is the piece that we use to advocate from that point forward. But that building there is a very key part of our direction.
Thank you, Phil. So we'll pick this up again in our next, in our regional land transport plan item. Mike, Duncan, and then Ash.
Yeah, it was just a question. I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask the question, but what information do we have about the success? What are the most successful interventions, road safety interventions that have been implemented and value for money, and including speed limits? Do we have any good heads up on that?
Not with someone like me, but I imagine if we did a deeper dive into speed, we could support the committee's desires of what knowledge they actually want. Don't know if you'd have anything further in your role.
Yeah, well, there is a lot of good information nationally, and then there's also international information. And realistically, over time, and we're talking like 30 years, it's been mostly the changes to automobile vehicle safety that have seen, I guess, the step change in safety for vehicles. So that's like, well, first of all, safety belts and for all seats, and then, you know, just the design of cars and everything like that, airbags and things like that, ABS and things like that. But the things that we influence, like roads and road safety and speed, and then this council also supports through the road safety report that we just talked about, like improving like driver and behaviour on the road. And so they all have their part, but then it's a little bit contextual, coming back to the roads and the road sides information that we have, and that's where I say for New Zealand, and that was what the previous speed management changes were predicated on, was that a lot of New Zealand's roads and roadsides are designed for, I guess, a safe operating speed at about 80 k's, but we run them as open road at 100 k's, and therein is the issue for a lot, I'm not saying all, of those roads, and as the chair's acknowledged, so that was addressed by this committee and a lot of the regional transport committees, and certainly a lot of work was done by the road controlling authorities as part of that last review, and then it came down to a change of government and a change of policy at that level.
Okay, so there. Thanks, Lorraine. That's beautifully explained. I'm a little bit reluctant to go to Ash because I know how speed really does push your buttons, but I'll let you speak.
So the problem is the time it takes, and the thing is that, you know, everybody in this room, it's local knowledge, okay? And each of us have things in our areas where we identify local issues because we live and breathe it. It's the time it takes to remedy it that's the problem, because it does take years and years and years and years. Not to the fault of Andrew, by the way, because he is awesome and he's an advocate. He's really good too. He's sort of my go-to guy. I'd just give him a ring and say this and this and this, and he tells me to calm down, and then we come up with a solution. But and the other thing too is we've made it in our country, you know, so expensive to change the signs for a start, you know, where it doesn't have to be either, and that's the problem. But I think that's something that need, you know, from a committee point, you know, there's places in our communities where we can identify the dangerous points, get them through and see if they can be prioritised somehow. We just had a classic example of that young lady coming in here this morning and telling us, you know, she's taking time out of her day to bother to come here for 5 minutes and speak to us. Now, that should raise alarm bells, because if something does happen on those roads, and I've got experience where I've probably attended 300-400 accidents, fatals, you name it, back in my previous, when we had tow truck and stuff, and it's not much fun. Same thing with the fireman doing his, you know, address. We really need to take notice of that and see what we can do, because they are simple fixes, very simple. Half an hour, change the signs.
Reduce speed limits. That's the message, isn't it? So, yeah, no, thank you, Ash. No, I hear that loud and clear. Okay, yeah, and look, and I think, you know, lots of valid points, and we will come back to this in our next item as well. But look, thank you, Lorraine. If there's no other queries around the director's report, I'll ask for a move and a seconder, please. Thank you, Jeanette, and thank you, Ash. All in favour? Carried. Thanks, everybody. All right, Catherine is going to look at the Regional Land Transport Plan 2027 update. Just firstly, a thank you to all the members for your contributions to the two workshops that we've already held in forming, of course, this very important document. So I'll hand over to Catherine to bring us through. Thank you.
Morning, Chair and Committee. This is a long paper, so I'll take it as read, but I'll flag a few things. So this is just an update on progress, really, on where we are with the RLTP development. And some key documents have been shared with you today. The first is the report from the ILM workshops, which have been circulated previously after the workshop as minutes. So one of the tasks, I guess, is to confirm the summary report from that workshop. Using that ILM framework, we then had a few workshops with the regional advisory group and have used that document to then develop our draft strategic framework, which is essentially the visions and objectives and headline targets for the RLTP. So appendix attachment 3 is the main attachment for that particular document. So the strategic objectives have really stemmed from the findings of the ILM workshops, and the headline targets have followed through with that, whilst also looking at conjunction of the RLTP monitoring report, where some inconsistencies or inabilities to measure certain things have, you know, been made evident, I guess. So we've tried to work quite hard to develop targets that are really well informed and set us up quite well going forward. A key comment there, I guess, is well, again, confirmation of our draft strategic framework of where we're heading, but also the inclusion of a vision. It's not a requirement to include a vision statement in the RLTP. We have in previous documents. It does allow us to have a longer term vision that transcends RLTPs. So it's both to confirm that approach. We then also have the draft significance policy and method for prioritization. These are really statutory processes, a lot of them, so they really haven't required much redevelopment from the operative RLTP, but there have been some minor tweaks, particularly for the method. So happy to take questions.
Thanks, Catherine. Okay, we'll start with Jeanette.
I've written to Liz on this, and unfortunately, Rodney's not here today, but just when we did the ILM, if you look at page 42 of the meeting pack, we had explicitly included and critical rural economy connections, and that seems to have fallen off. If we look at the draft transport priorities on page 35 under economic productivity, we just seems to have lost that. And we wanted to keep that in there, particularly to provide justification for maybe the low cost, low risk funding for local roads, because it's not just the strategic, corridors, but it's also ensuring that those other local roading networks that support the rural economy are also prioritised. So just wondering if we can have a look at that, and perhaps by adding in at the end of the bullet point on page 35, which is future-proof and optimised priority strategic corridors, road and rail, which was very similar to what had been in the previous land transport plan. If we could perhaps look at adding something like including those supporting / connecting critical rural economy transport movements, so that we keep that capturing of our local networks that support our GDP. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Got another one too, Liz.
Yeah, go for it. Go now. Yeah.
So the other one is actually on request of Waitomo Mayor John Robinson. in regard to State Highway 3 and the Awakino Gorge. He has forwarded an email to Liz as chair. And as part of that, obviously, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, government, for the 50 million that was allocated under the budget, which is fantastic. And he talks about the support of the 7 mayors who had a meeting in New Plymouth last week with the CE of NZTA. And he carries on to say, in a priority sense, in addition to the efforts that we are making as mayors of district councils in both regions, we need to convince our Waikato RTC members to rank this section of the region's roading network as the #1 priority under the Regional Transport Plan. Taranaki RTC members have advised that this is their top priority. So I'm forwarding that communication from our mayor for the committee's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. Did we want to have some comments around that particular item? Because, yes, okay, we've got a speaking order, but I want to stay on topic if we can, just around acknowledging that specific point. Mike, did you have something you wanted to note? And other Mike? Oh.
Yeah, I was down at that meeting. And it does make sense that both regional councils do align on this. I mean, it's going to be twice as powerful if we do. I mean, we went down there thinking we were chasing money, but in the end, we were actually chasing the how to spend the $50 million in the best way. And aligning between the 2 regional councils came through really strongly. So just reiterate Mayor John's point.
Thank you, Mike. And I just want to acknowledge, of course, the Coromandel, similar issues, and just making sure that we're acting as a region here as well. And I just note that, of course, with Peter not around the table right now, I just, want to ensure that this is whatever changes we make to our draft for now acknowledges the region as opposed to just a particular area. So, but take your point. It's well made. Mike, did you have something similar on the same vein?
On Jeanette's item 1, I support that and would like to see that inclusion. On item 2, support in part. I think the letter to the minister addresses it a bit. I also, it's always been Taranaki's #1 item. It always has been. It has never been high on the Waikato list because it's not critical to us. I think we need to support Taranaki in this. I don't know if it's #1, but it should be up there. And I think the letter expresses that. So,
yeah, no, thank you, Mike. I think that we're all aligned in that space. Sue.
I know I'm on the speaking list, but I will respond to this one as well. Just a question about, I didn't think we were up to that point in the process where we're determining what is #1. I thought that was still part of the process to come. So I just want some clarity on that and support. I think that, it's probably, in my mind, too early to say, yes, it's going to be #1, that we've got quite a lot of consideration to think through along that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess that speaks to my point, we're acting as a region. Yep. So it's not going to head to #1. There's no agreement around that. What I'm, I guess, signalling at this point is that we've got, we've progressively moved since our workshop, in that we have had the 2026 budget announced. So I feel like we probably need to come together as a group again, just to consider, the impact, the changes that have occurred since our last workshop, and how we might, how that might be reflected in our new plan. So I think Phil has some thoughts on that. If you're happy to speak to them.
Well, I was just going to say that by now we would have hoped to have also received the draft government policy statement on land transport, which is where the minister's expectations start to be outlined more broadly than the budget, but we haven't had that yet. So we did pencil in that we might have been able to give you an update on that to this meeting, and this committee has a role in providing a regional submission to that document as well. But we're not at that place yet, so nobody's quite sure when that's going to be released, but keep being told it's imminent, so hopefully it's relatively soon. But that also helps frame up and provides a check-in to the alignment between our regional perspective and the national perspective.
Thanks, Phil. We'll go to Catherine.
Just to add and clarify that, yes, we're not at that prioritisation stage yet. That will be what occurs over the next stage, essentially. But we are also, whilst we're also waiting for the GPS, we would also be waiting for the SHIP, the State Highway Investment Program, and then working with both of those and with the program of activities and overall program to develop the prioritization. But we're not there, but this conversation is helpful to guide our next step.
Yeah. Excellent, thank you. Okay, we'll go back to our speaking order and new items. So we'll go Sue and then Duncan.
Thank you. First of all, an observation about the process, having engaged in it for the first time. I did find the workshops quite difficult in terms of it seemed to come from a blank sheet of paper kind of perspective, and that seemed to me to be quite random. And when I look at items 3 and 4 on the agenda today, I can see that having all the information from item 4 would have been a very useful part of both workshops, because we don't come from a blank page. We actually have information on how, what our plans were or are still, and how we're trucking on those things. And I think that would have been really useful in terms of context for those workshops, because I think when I put those two things together, when I put items 3 and 4 on this agenda together, and I hear the conversation that we just had on item 1, which is primarily about safety, and then I look now at the outcome here, and we've got a 10% weighting on safety. It concerns me, because I can see that that's an area that we haven't been doing very well on. And when we look at item 4 and the update there. So yeah, I guess I'm just expressing some concern around how we take research and evidence into those workshop fora that I felt were not front and centre in the discussions when we have it. And it may be that that's an issue for me because I'm new to this process and didn't carry that context in with me, and others may have already carried that context with them. But it just seems to me, and in previous lives, I've done a lot of workshop work. That quite a critical piece of context I felt wasn't actually in the room with us. So look, sorry that's been a little bit of a perhaps a cathartic. Now looking back, I think that there are some issues. I don't know what we do about that. It does concern me that we've got safety with such a low ranking on it. And I wondered if there's any view around the table about what we might do about that if people share that concern. I also wanted to ask a question about there's a new something new that's been introduced that came from the RAG, and I don't know much about the RAG, but I wanted to understand what they meant by reducing the need to travel and what that's a reference to, because that wasn't discussed at either of the workshops, and I just wanted some context around that.
Thanks, Sue. I head back to you.
Perhaps if I
Lorraine,
answer
Catherine?
first on the process. So I guess the purpose of an ILM is to start from a blank sheet and to kind of have a blue skies. It's your opportunity as this committee to identify your key issues. I do recall on the day we were, I remember the facilitator probing a little bit around the safety because it didn't come to the fore, but it is still in there. Where things are now, the next bit, as Catherine's explained, we've kind of done the taken the high level process, the objectives and the direction and the approach out of it, and then we've done the administrative part around some of the wording on the significance policies and things. But what still has to come back to you is the matching of the evidence against the problem statement, the cause and the effect. What is the evidence that we have for what you've said is the problem, and what is the evidence we have of the cause? And then at that point, you get to reconsider if you accept the evidence and still have that priority, or if you feel like with that evidence, you would reprioritize as a group.
Okay, so that's when the evidence is going to be brought to bear, and there is still a place for that. Good.
Yeah,
I was concerned about that. My other observation would be that I see that compared with the last plan, that we are reducing our targets quite significantly in areas where we haven't been doing very well. And my initial feedback on that, pending what you just said about looking at the evidence and perhaps applying that lens to it, would be that adjusting our targets substantially downwards because we're performing poorly doesn't seem to me to be the right approach. If they are areas that we've, in fact, some of them are areas where there are government targets that we're required to meet. Some feedback on that and what happens next on that front.
All good. And just to jump back to your point on the need to travel phrasing, I believe that understood that.
Oh yes.
Apologies if that was
on that. Yeah.
a bit misleading. I think it's the need to travel via transport options that emit emissions, and so that's where your active modes and your cycling infrastructure and all the other transport options come in, because that comment comes under the environmental sustainability objective. It's also just reducing the need to travel by vehicle or choosing PT or cycling and having other options in place. With the targets, yes, that was some of the conversation, particularly the road safety. The DSI targets were particularly ambitious in the last RLTP, which didn't really then match up with where the GPS ended up landing in terms of having the program and list of activities that were funded to deliver on that. But I think what we've done is really reviewed and looked at the 5-year rolling averages of DSIs, for example, and we have been ambitious to some extent to exceed where we're going and to acknowledge programs or initiatives that may be in place, and then adding a 5% or 5 or 7%, I think, increase on where we're heading, just to make it a bit more realistic. We don't, whilst we want to be ambitious, we also don't particularly want to be sitting in every monitoring report not achieving anything that's close to achievable. So it's kind of just realigning expectations to the current funding realities. And again, those might shift with the GPS. We just need to be a bit adaptable as we go through.
I think the other area that the target is reduced substantially is in mode shift, and in particular use of public transport. And my observation would be that the decisions that government made to not fund those areas anymore, or to reduce their funding substantially in those areas, is probably quite a bit of the reason why we haven't been able to make progress on those targets, and is therefore reducing the target the right approach, or reducing it substantially as we have, as it suggests we're going to.
Don't have funding, or I guess the objective is to achieve with the funding most that you can achieve.
Sorry, Mike, can I get you to turn your microphone off so that we can get Lorraine a microphone?
Yeah. So activities should, well, there needs to be financial responsibility for the activities, the programs that go into the RLTP. And if the funding is not there, then I guess that becomes the tension or the dilemma. You're trying to achieve something that the region as a whole is not resourced to achieve.
Yeah. I just wonder whether that's our role to actually adjust in that way, particularly when we've got an election, general election coming up this year that could change everything. I felt like our role as Waikato Regional Council's role, therefore, is to actually argue for the needs of the region and to be clear about what we want to achieve in this space for the region. So I just, I guess I'm looking for some assurance about how, if we wanted to adjust those targets that are in the draft, what's the process for that?
They can be determined through the process that we're going through. I guess what I'm trying to signal is the money needs to be committed to. So, for instance, if safety is your issue, and we had the discussion that reducing speed would be seen as an easy path, and I imagine that was what people were committing to programs in the last RLTP, and then we see we haven't achieved it. But we also know that we are currently in a different setting for getting access to programs that will reduce speed. Then I guess you all have to come to the RLTP with the contribution that you're prepared to make to reduce it from your own communities.
Thank you, Lorraine. I think what I completely hear you, Sue, and I understand where you're going with it. It's quite a strategic move. I think that we should have further conversations about the best way to get the outcomes that I know you're looking for.
That we're collectively looking for, yeah.
Well, that's right. But I think what the way to get there is you're essentially proposing a different way to get there, and I just want to, I personally want to have a little bit more of a think about that. But I think members have heard you, and I think there's often a couple of different ways to skin the cat, right? So let's have a think about how that alternative method might actually be beneficial for the region. I hear you on that.
Okay.
Duncan, and then we'll go to Mike.
Yeah, my question is just page 37, the top headline targets. Unless I'm missing something, but you've got the headline targets for economic productivity, and they seem to only relate to train, rail freight, and public transport boardings, which are something probably a lot easier than anything else to get the data for. But on the face of that, Hamilton City could have free-flowing buses, but the rest of the place turns to glue, and that doesn't seem to be a full enough measure of economic productivity targets anyway. And a lot of people don't have the choice the realistic choice to use public transport, and congestion in cities is a real economic cost and to well-being of people. So I'm interested. Yeah.
I guess the comments here would be twofold. One, that these headline targets are the strategic directions of the targets, and then sitting underneath all of these, whilst we develop the monitoring framework as we go through the RLTP process, there will be other KPIs that we can include along the way. So I guess these were identified as the main targets which link to the objective for economic productivity, and through that discussion and workshopping, the public transport within the metro spatial area was flagged as the key trigger, I guess, in terms of economic productivity and on-time bus reliability on core urban PT network routes. It doesn't rule out the importance of regional PT boardings and increase on travel time elsewhere, but just to address the economic productivity.
No, well, I'll just say I'd be concerned if those are the only two headline targets. Headline, I suppose, is the main two targets. That might not be other things like drastically increasing congestion in a city. Just sort of slips the radar. So I know there would be measures of ways of measuring that. That's my only concern, really.
Yeah, And I guess it's just as a final comment, linking with a strategic objective where it's the efficient and reliable strategic corridor network that supports economic growth and integrated transport systems in urban form environments. That's where the MSP was then flagged as the key KPI for that objective above.
Okay, thank you. We've got plenty of we've got opportunity to make changes and tweaks and things, Duncan. So keep that in mind too as we go through the journey. Mike, please, you're next.
Yeah, so coming back to the ILM and stuff, I actually was pretty happy with it and where it got to, and I felt, and so I really want to focus on safety here. I felt safety was reasonably well addressed in that, in terms of it's in the inclusive access as well. Safety is a big chunk of that. So, but I want to sort of look at high level here in terms of targets. You know, we're sort of out of sync with the rest of the world here in terms of developed nations who have actually had big successes and really pulling down their fatality rate and stuff through the sort of road to zero approach. But we failed in that miserably, and we've actually thrown it out now. And which is, you know, I don't know if there was quite an interesting article in one of the papers the other day about it that went into quite a bit of detail. We're quite unique in that we've failed in the implementation of it, and now we're sort of projecting it as and we're just probably starting some of those benefits. The big area where we can improve safety, we're not going to stop people making mistakes, but we can. Speed is probably the biggest tool you've got in that box. How we deal with speed, and again, we've failed on that basis, and we just had a debate about that. You know, that our process for managing speed on our road networks is just abysmal. We can't. It takes years to do simple things, and speed is probably your biggest tool, because at 80 k's. If the factor of death is a lot less than at 100 k's, at 50 k's, you know, in school zones as opposed to 30 k's, again, the factors are multiple times. And we cannot implement simple. I've got crossings. We had a guy here for a crossing in KiwiRail. I got 3 or 4 crossings through my wards that want better systems to protect their kids, and they can't. It's just so difficult to get them in, and then they cost so much, you know. Because so look, I just really at a high level. To me, the failure of Road to Zero was a comms issue. You know, it's a bit like the waters thing that got under Labor that got hijacked by the Maori control issue. It was a sideshow, but it ended up taking the whole thing over. It was about how do we make our water sustainable. Same with roading. It got caught up in a whole lot of nanny state. We're going to tell you what to do, as opposed to articulating why those speed limits are so critical. And we didn't do it very well, and we lost the game, lost the debate, and National used it as an election issue and got some votes out of it. But because it was badly communicated, and that's, again, that's our job. Why are we doing this? And there's a good reason why, because it actually saves lives. How do we implement it well? We have a good process. Our process currently is abysmal. We need to change the stuff. And I believe this committee has a role in that. But in terms of the targets that we've set out of our ILM, I'm pretty happy with them. I don't think they need. I thought that was good. Good process, good outcomes. Economic productivity. It comes back to Jeanette's first point earlier. That needs to be in there, because those low roads, that it's our regions that produce. So those roads need to be in there, not just state highways. And you know, there does need to be a focus on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Good points. Question for one or the other. RAG, what does it do? Who are they? Who's on it? Who've done a lot of the work and things like that? So I just thought it'd be helpful to understand that a little bit better.
Yes, so the RAG is the Regional Advisory Group. It is essentially technical staff throughout the region at all district councils. We have NZTA and KiwiRail also on the Regional Advisory Group. We meet monthly to talk through various things that are going on in the region and projects and things, and I have been workshopping with them specifically on RLTP, and we've been developing this through them testing, sending all the draft documents with them ahead of time. So if I just go back to the RLTP scene setting report, I think that was taken to RTC. I think we have quite a strong relationship with the RAG, and the intention is for the RAG members to have quite strong relationships with their elected members to make sure that messages are being shared both down to us but also out to them as well.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to go Angela and then Jeanette.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, agree with a lot of what's been said already. And probably just to reiterate what Sue was saying around, you know, those targets for PT, you know, linking it in with the environmental sustainability target as well. Noting in your commentary that there are central government targets for that, and PT and active modes are a great way to meet those targets. Yeah, I'd be advocating as well for a more ambitious, or stepping towards more ambitious targets in that space as well, given who knows what's going to happen after November. The other thing as well, yeah, the MSP and the critical link between services and infrastructure is really important for those councils involved within the MSP project. So I know we did have quite a focus on linking up LTP investment to support PT services as well. So you're really keen to see that work progressed through our partner councils as well. You know, we've got increase in PT boardings, but we know that people will only take PT within the city if it's fast, frequent and reliable. So we do need those infrastructure bus priority. And we did talk last Friday about the easy ones of bus priority at traffic lights, but our small stickers on the back of buses, with now backed up with legislation about letting the buses go first. But yeah, it's just really critical that we all do work together and understanding how underneath the headline targets that all fits together as well. So my last point would be around the environmental sustainability as well. We do focus quite a bit on emissions, but at the regional council as well, we do a lot of work around air quality, and we do have data from the air sheds to show air quality. So just curious whether that's something that we might look to add in as a measure around, yeah, another way to back up that emissions story as well. Thanks.
Happy to look at that.
Thanks, Angela. Okay, Jeanette, and then
Thank you.
we'll
Just
wrap up, folks. Yeah.
Just building on what Duncan said about these headline targets under economic productivity, that the rest of the region could be stuck like glue. There isn't anything in here that provides a target for the truck movements, you know, the primary sector coming in, but also those truck movements taking things to supermarkets, taking things interregionally down to, you know, Taranaki through that State Highway 3. And all of that we actually spoke about, there needs to be, you know, this has only got rail and then public transport. There's nothing there to give a target for the system working efficiently for dispersing product around the region. And I read in the rest of your the report there was some difficulty in monitoring truck movements or something, but that shouldn't result in it being left out, because it is still an important factor. Maybe we just need to find a different way of monitoring.
Yeah, we can relook at that and to check, but part of that discussion at the ILM workshop and in subsequent investigations, I guess, is a lot of that roading freight movement is also commercially sensitive information to a various extent. So what we could get from data will only be one part of the story, and I'm just conscious of setting targets or including KPIs that are either difficult or unreliable or not really reflective of what we're looking for to be able to measure successfully going forward. We've seen that with some of the targets and KPIs that we have in our current RLTP when we come to then monitor on it. So there is a reluctance just to include road freight and vehicle movements like that, but we can certainly relook at it.
We might have to think about how we do that. I think Jeanette, Rodney might be a good person to have a chat to.
Yeah.
Ash, last word.
Yeah, just I'm just reflecting on some of the conversations around the table, and picking up on what Mike and particularly Sue. I think down the end there, I was on this committee, what would be 6 years ago, I suppose, and we're having the same conversations, same roads, same thing, and this is where the frustration comes in because it takes so long. And I think I said at the first meeting here back this time was, unless NZTA can get the funding, they can't do these jobs. We can throw whatever we like at them and come up with these suggestions. I think Andrew would be able to back it up and say the funding is over allocated. Okay, so there's no money. I think we need to address that. We like harp on about toll roads because I've travelled around the world and there's the best roads are all tolls. We need to advocate probably more strongly as how to get the funding, because without that, we're wasting our time. I think it goes back, I think Sue was sort of touching on it, how effective are we as a committee? Because, we can have all these things, but where's the benchmark to say we're actually achieving anything? That's my question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to maybe just focus on how we can advocate to get the money so that the NZTA can respond to the young lady's road. Boom, we've got funding there. The tolls, though, need to go into a pool, not just the tolls for that road. We set it archaic, primitive conditions around a toll where it should just go into the pot so they can respond to a storm event and Thames Coromandel.
Well, do we have a deal for you, Ash? Because later on, that's exactly what Andrew's going to be talking about in his tolling paper. So, yeah, so we'll, yep. I hear what you're saying, but as a region, obviously there are many levers that we can pull in our own councils. So I'm just highlighting the fact that everyone's voting budgets are no doubt at maximum, including NZTA's, but as district councils as well, we also play a really big part in prioritising roads in our own area. Obviously not NZTA ones, but yeah, if we're talking about local roads, obviously those are things that we can address individually. But if we're talking national roads, then yeah, we have our candidate here, our person here, who we can continue to advocate for. But tolling, as I think Andrew will talk about later, is probably the way of the future. So to your point, Ash, it's an opportunity, that's for sure. Okay, can we wrap this up because we're just behind? Oh, Andrew, yeah.
I was just going to make one comment, and yes, the funding environment, obviously, it's fairly grim around everywhere, every road controlling authority, and I don't think we've been shying away from that, but also need to remind ourselves of the positives, and I think Waikato region as a whole, especially through the budget, was effectively the winner, right? So there are good things going on as well within a very, very tight funding environment, and there is no silver bullet to that, but that's what I mean before. What can we actually influence? What can we do with it? As a group?
And there's no doubt, I think the Ms spoke quite strongly. It's, we've got the Cambridge to Piededi, we've got the Awakino, we've got the Coromandel now. Massive funding from government and NZTA really going into that. So did you have any comment, Mike, as well?
Just to pick up on that, I think there's about $6 billion extra has gone into roading, but basically a third of that, just under 1.8 billion or so, has just come into the Waikato, and we're the only road of national significance that actually got any funding. And so I think
we should be happier. That's what you're saying,
should
right?
Be happier. And that road, getting back to safety, Sue, has led to a lot of fatalities, a lot of injuries. So hey, I'm hoping it'll help in every way.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Okay, right, folks, we're going to just quick, I've got a recommendation just to receive the report, but also to confirm that the draft sort of investment logic mapping. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for this staff recommendation for this report? Ash is going to move, Alvis is going to second. I always go to you, don't I? You're always on my side, light as sign alike. All in favour? Carried. No one unhappy? No, good. Okay, right, so that's carried. Right, we'll move on to the RLTP 2024 midterm monitoring data. And Anna is here and Catherine as well. Thank you. I don't think we've met you before, so welcome to this committee. Is this your first time presenting to us?
Oh yeah, for this committee, yes. My name is Kana, Senior Transport Analyst. So good morning, Chair and committee members. Can I start?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please. Yes.
This report provides a midterm update on how the RLTP 2024 is progressing in terms of delivery and whether we are seeing results on the ground. With your permission, Chair, I would like to take the report as read and highlight a few things. So the key message here is that we are seeing progress, but most outcomes are still at an early stage, and we are not seeing clear change yet. This is not unexpected. RLTP is functioning as a long-term direction, setting framework, and many of the changes we are aiming for are long-term and transformational. Starting with what's working well, growth and economics development is the strongest area. Major state highway projects are progressing. Travel time reliability is improving. This reflects where most of the investment is going, and we are seeing that translate into measurable outcome. In contrast, several other objectives are not yet tracking well. On safety, although some programs are being delivered, deaths and serious injuries are not reducing. We are off track for the 2030 target. For accessibility and transport options, this is the weakest area. Public transport and active mode initiatives have been delayed or scaled down, and there's no clear evidence of mode shift yet. On climate change, emissions are still above 2018 level, so we are not on the track for the 2035 reduction target. And for resilience, we are seeing some project delivery, but performance is variable and heavily influenced by the severe weather events. A big part of the story is funding and priorities. The program is heavily weighted toward road maintenance and state highways, while investment in public transport and active mode is relatively limited. On top of that, a number of activities are delayed and scaled down or unfunded, which is constraining progress, particularly in the areas where we need transformational change. So overall, we are seeing a strong alignment between investment and outcomes in economic growth and development, but that's not being matched in safety, mode shift, resilience, or emission reductions. We are doing a lot of planning and early work, but it hasn't yet translated into system level change. Back to Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Kana. Appreciate that information. Right, any questions? We've got Mike.
All right, thanks for your report. My question is actually for Andrew. And it's around the opportunity cost, do you think, of the money that's being reinvested into the 16K of expressway between Cambridge and Hamilton, or just south of Cambridge and Hamilton? Yeah, I mean, I guess A, the reason it only lasted such a short amount of time, but B, is it how much money is involved in that sort of project in terms of a quantum?
It would be, and off the top of my head, so I probably wouldn't give a number. I can check that up and get that today. Can't quite recall. Right. It's a significant cost of what we're doing there. 100% necessary, as you know, and not a situation we want to get ourselves into again, particularly.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether some of these other projects in the budget overall weren't funded because of something like that. But I guess in In terms of a road of national significance, it's probably a drop in the bucket, isn't it?
Yeah, that comes from maintenance and operations, not improvement.
Okay, Sue.
Oh, thank you for the report. I've referenced this already in my kōrero this morning because I think this really tells us a lot about, where the investment is. It's really clear that where the investment happens, then we actually start to meet the targets. And clearly the investment has primarily been in the economic space, and that's had good results. We've got more investment on that from the current budget, as we've just discussed. So we're doing very, very well in that area. I think the amber on resilience should be aided and abetted by some of the budget decisions as well. So hopefully that will be able to improve going forward. But we've really got I can't see anything of hope on the horizon for the areas that we're doing so poorly in. And, I note that we have, and we have to talk about the elephant in the room. We've got a target of reducing emissions by 40%, is it 40% or 41%? 41% by 2035 on 2018 rates. And we've increased by 7.5%. So we're going in absolutely, not only we're not making any dent on that target, we're going in the opposite direction on that target. So, I guess I'm venting a frustration about that we, in our regional, in our plan that we've just taken forward to the next step for going forward, that we are again looking to reduce our efforts in some of these areas that we're already doing poorly on, and increase our efforts on areas that we've been doing pretty well on as a region. And it just seems to me that this is a point that we should be seen on, because we, subsequent to your report, there are now funding opportunities that actually even, make the disparity even stronger for where we're trucking. So I do also want to celebrate that those budget initiatives and the announcements are great for the region, but they're not addressing the areas that we're not making the progress on. So I haven't really got a question. I'm really just giving some feedback about how insightful this report is. I think it really, and that's why I would have liked to have seen it as part of the discussion about what we do next, because knowing where we've tracked, knowing how well we've done in some areas and how poorly we're doing in other areas, I think would have really helped the discussion going forward. And so I'm just really thanking you for the report. Very useful. I think that is something that we as governors can't ignore. Thank you.
Okay, look, thank you. Thank you, Sue. I did have a question that's just come through online, just a query around the colours, amber as such. So would you take that as a partial, I guess in between, right? Green and red. So I just wanted to clarify that's the answer for the listener. Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, everybody, we have a recommendation, please, to receive this report. Can I have a move in a second? And kind of looks very relieved that we're about to move on. So Sue's happy to move, and a seconder, please. Ray's going to second. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, Carla. Great report.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you again. All right. Okay, we'll move on to our next item. This is Lorraine's presenting the RTC submission to MOT time of use charging regulations.
Sorry,
page
to disappoint
94.
me.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. No,
That's
more than
okay.
happy.
Lorraine make.
We're on page
make a message
94
of me.
for everybody as well.
So this is a submission for the Ministry of Transport's consultation that they are out with at the moment for time of use charging regulations. To be clear, this is limited in scope, this consultation. It's very constrained to technical aspects like vehicle classifications and charging ratios and enforcements and infringement fees. It doesn't visit the broader policy of time of use charging in general, or key design elements. So we thought that, I don't believe that RTC submitted on the original time of use charging when the Ministry of Transport went out originally, but we did support, I think, Hamilton City Council's submission at the time. But we thought that this was a good opportunity for the RTC to signal some broader commentary or recommendations, particularly on the scheme design and the reinvestment of those infringement fees, to benefit transport projects or options, and reduce congestion and things like that within the realm. So
look, thanks, Kathy. Look, I found this a really interesting item on our agenda, and of course we have some timeframes to work towards as well. So I'm interested in comments. This is quite an interesting topic, I believe. Angela.
Yeah, probably a question for you, Liz. Are we having an update through NZTA on time of use charging today?
The answer is yes, later on today.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So just wondering whether we get some insights from that might be included in the submission, or would we pick up on that through your delegation?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if there's anything else through what they're doing, we can obviously include it later anyway, because the second part of that recommendation is that you'll be delegating myself and Phil to approve the lodgement anyway. So
I'll just have one point then.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, great submission. Appreciate excluding buses from that time of use charging. I read that right. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Why would you penalise vehicles that are carrying lots and lots and lots of people and fully loaded? Yeah, so great submission, and look forward to the presentation from NZTA.
And to clarify, sorry, on that point, is that my understanding is that buses were already are exempt under the legislation, but because the time of use charging is up to the scheme design package at an individual level, it's reiterating the fact that yes, it should be reflective in practice at that scheme level as well.
So I can see how beneficial this could be, for the city. But do you think this is something that district councils can be looking at over time as their towns start to congest?
Potentially.
Yeah. There's no limitation, is there, around size of township this can be included with, and that will be a question we can ask later. But I'm just kind of looked at this and a couple of obvious towns that might benefit from something like this. Just not looking at anyone in particular, but anyway. So look forward to a bit more information on that later. Is there any other queries? Mike, you've got your.
Well, just to preempt that, Cambridge and Taumuri are not any of those towns. Yeah, this is definitely set up for a city.
Yes, yeah, Tito has some issues. You're quite right, Sue. All right. So is everyone happy with the recommendation there? And we've got so we are actually choosing A or B, but I think given the that we've got a presentation from NZTA a little bit later, is everyone happy that we move number 1, and then under number 2 we'll go with delegates myself and Phil King for the lodgement of the submission? Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. Okay. All right. Angela's happy to move that. Can I have a seconder, please? And Jeanette's going to happy to second. All in favour? Agreed. Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on now to our State Highway 3 Awakino Gorge and working group updates. Lorraine is back. Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the purpose of this report was just to present the minutes from the latest State Highway 3 working group, and to contextualise that, because obviously there's been a lot happening with the, in particular, the Waikato end of the State Highway 3 improvement project, which started with the Awakino tunnel replacement and is now progressed down to the Mount Messenger end. Even as we were writing it, things were changing, and then there was the budget announcement. But there is, as we've mentioned previously, a working party meeting to be held on Wednesday this week, and it's an opportunity for the committee to put forward any messages and information that they want to be taken to that meeting.
Yeah, Lorraine, you're quite right. This is a moving target now that, of course, the government have, issued a great deal of money towards this project. So it's more around how that money will be used. And I know the mayors are in the area are very active in this space as well. Any comments on this item? Otherwise, we'll just continue to keep you updated. Jeanette.
But just further on that item and just conveying further message from our Mayor, John Robinson, who has spoken quite widely about his view that a bypass route, that NZTA should invest in a bypass route that would keep the route open when the gorge closes. And he's obviously sent you a map as well. Just relaying his message on that, really.
Thank you, Jeanette. And I know that Andrew is well aware of some of the suggestions that are coming through from the regions. Andrew, did you want to comment?
Yeah, if I can just comment briefly. Significant amount of work down there over the last couple of months for teams that have been doing an amazing job, and a lot of communication back and forth with the freight industry and wider road users. Not ideal. Would reiterate there is no silver bullet here. Yes, there is some amazing funding that has been released or will be released by the Crown to support efforts in future. It will go a long way, but it won't necessarily stop problems from happening in future. We don't know the detail of what that will be used for yet, and I'd like to think there's some local voice in the mayors that have been so active in their advocacy with that meeting with our CE last week, would be able to be involved in those discussions, and the meeting you had will have gone a long way toward that. A detour route of a local road, which Mayor John is proposing, and I'll talk to him further about this, that would be an RLTP type discussion, as you've put forward today as a priority for consideration. It is a local road, so there would be, I imagine, local share required for that too. I'm 99% sure that the funding will go towards the state highway component.
Thank you, Andrew. Alvisa.
I am on it. Oh, cool. I was just wondering, how's the safety of the alternative route been? Is there any sort of...
You're talking about the state highway detour, or
Yeah.
what's been proposed as the local road detour?
No, the first one.
State highway detour, I haven't heard any issues with the safety. I haven't been made aware that there has been an issue.
No, that's good.
I know
Thank you.
it's not an ideal route though, in terms of the amount of traffic that would have been directed around there.
Yeah.
But obviously we then, fairly quickly got to that point of allowing convoys to go through and down the stop go.
Okay, thank you. I asked because in the past when it's been closed, we've had to take alternative routes out the back roads, and there were some significant health and safety issues around that time, but this was quite a while ago, so it's good to hear there hasn't been anything significant come up.
No, there was in South Waikato with T2W. There was absolutely issues a year or two ago,
Okay.
but not with this Awakino stretch, yes.
Okay, thank
you for that, Mike.
Yeah, look, an interesting one. I've had a lot of involvement in this highway for over 40 years. I was surveying down there in the 80s, and it's, the Awakino Tunnel bypass, great event. The SH3 working group, I was instrumental in setting that up in 2002, and that got a huge amount of benefits for that piece of highway, and continues to do so. I just want a bit of reality here, though, around resilience. Look, there is no easy alternative. The Mount Messenger bypass, as we can see, came originally scheduled at 230 million. Now it's going to be up around 600 million. This is classic. This is, look at the Hamilton bypass, blew out by 800 million. So I'm sort of terrified of what's going to happen at Pairiri, Resilience, look, the closures on that highway, in my experience, have been north of Mount Messenger. Mount Messenger's closed a few times, but they've not been major ones. The big closures have been up in the gorge and around the tunnel and stuff. You're never going to be 100% resilient, and it's a massive impact for Taranaki. It's not a big impact for Waikato. Reality is you do your best. I mean, Mangataki Gorge was closed for a couple of months. That's south of Pupu there. The whole hill fell down, and what was put in place is good, but it's not that resilient. That whole hill could continue to fall down again in another big event. That was in the 90s. So I just think we've got to be realistic about what we can do, and you know, we've talked about this in here. Coromandel's in a similar situation. We don't have the money. Sometimes you're better to react, you know, because you're not going to build a bypass around the Awakino Gorge anytime soon. And the alternatives of Wanganui and Ohura are not great, and there's safety issues, but they're there. At least you've got an alternative. So I think, given what else we've got on our plate, I think what we're doing is probably the best we can in the situation. So I just really wanted to make those comments.
All right, thank you, Mike. Jeanette?
Sorry, I probably needed to make clearer as well the impact that there was actually in the Waikato region for Waitomo. It was very surprising even to me as a local how dead Pupu and Mokau became, and those businesses absolutely struggling, just totally struggling. It highlighted how much of the economy of that part of the region relies on travelling public. And in terms of the bypass, there is another route through Waikawa, which is usually the main bypass and always was before the tunnel went in. So anything like military helicopters and things like that, really big things used to come through there. This was a very, very localised weather event, and it hit that bypass road as well. It was just a tremendous amount of rain, very, very similar to what happened in Parongia. So for once, the main bypass road actually wasn't utilised, the main alternative local road. But yeah, it has had a massive impact in that part of the district. They're two fair-sized towns that have just lost their economy.
Thank you, Jeanette. Mike?
Just a couple of comments and a question. Yeah, one is $50 million does sound a lot for down there until you drive through the gorge. And if we look up north to the Brendouans and how they've sort of tried to rectify that, they've got sort of hills on one side but farmland on the other, whereas this has got very steep hills on one side and a river on the other. So I don't know how far $50 million is going to go, but it'll be a start. The other thing is, and I could have this wrong, is that the Mount Messenger Gorge, there's an issue with the property at the end of it. Which piece of infrastructure is that the right one? Yeah, so just so people are aware, there's a gorge too, hopefully somewhere, but there's issues around land acquisition through part of that system.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, everyone. I think, yeah, if there's no other queries, I've got a recommendation here to receive this report. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Ash is going to move. Jeanette's going to second. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Okay, Lisa is next on our KiwiRail update. Lisa is online with us. We are on page 109, everybody. Yes, and we did have questions for Lisa just around the earlier questions around the budget. So happy for members to ask those again. Welcome, Lisa. Hope you're well. I'll let you, get the ball rolling. Here we go.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Not great. Might just turn the volume up a little bit.
I think the volume might have just...
No, we're good now. We're great. Thank you.
We're good? Okay, great. Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. I am going to cover the ARNIP in here and the budget, and hopefully that answers some of your questions, but I'm happy to answer more questions at the end. So I've reiterated the KiwiRail overview. I know it was in the last pack, but I just think it's helpful to understand the extent of the network that we're looking after in the business that we run, which is multifaceted. I've got a couple of slides on the ARNIP, and particularly the planning for the next ARNIP, which is currently in progress. Within that, we're also looking at helping to, I guess, increase communications around level crossings with both regional councils, but also so that we've got some joined up programs for the RLTP planning processes. There's a small infrastructure update, which is not much. Next meeting, the regional infrastructure manager will be coming along to talk about our entombing program, which is currently one of those programs in terms of value for money and efficiency and reducing cost is one that's been hugely successful so far. And he's going to come, Jake Barbarich, who is our regional manager, will come along and share what we're doing with you. It's a program that we're really proud of. So on to the next one. Thank you. Okay, and again, there we go. So again, this is just to reinforce, this is the extent of the KiwiRail business. 4,600 employees, many of them unionised, many of them the people who work on the track, etc. Most of them track, and specialist engineering, design, etc. resources as well. We move 15 million tonnes of freight, enabling 24 million plus metro commuter trips per year, which is set to increase, of course, with City Rail Link and then down in Wellington once the new trains arrive in 2029. We operate and maintain 3,800 kilometres of track. Keep that in mind because that's what the ARNIP pays for, the maintenance and renewal of 3,800 kilometres of track. We own 18,000 plus hectares of land. I think we're the third or fourth biggest landlord in New Zealand. Most of that land is not leased out to other people. It's for rail purposes. It's the rail corridor. And there is some that's held for future development. For instance, Avondale to Southdown corridor, the pieces of land that we've bought is within that. We also run a tourism service, Great Journeys of New Zealand. There's 3 trains that operate. And we help with regional commuter rail, providing services where needed. We don't as such, we help operate, we don't as such own that part of the portfolio. It's a service offering for startup services particularly. And then of course you all know about the Inter-Islander ferry service, and we have some couple of little stats there which are up to date for you. Next page, thanks. This is the network, North Island network, and here we've got for your information just what our priority lines are the thickest lines that are on the map for the North Island. We've also got what tonnage those lines can take. So you'll see that we have in amongst that map to the left-hand side, yet the colours there are representing how much weight we can put onto the trains through those sections. And yeah, essentially we're kind of don't have any red sections that stand out. I think there is one down there, down a little branch line down near Wellington, but other than that, we're pretty much at mostly at the 18 tonnes upwards, which is what we need, and some older or smaller lines are in the blue space of the 16.3, which is the older and more traditional weight that we would carry or enable for rail. And again, sorry, I could just hear myself back then. Net tonne kilometres, net tonnage that we carry, again shown in colour coding there on the right-hand side. You'll see Napier to Wairoa down on the right-hand side is in red. That line is closed and we don't have any updates yet on whether that will reopen or not. Next slide, thank you. Okay, the ARNIP. So I'll start before we get into this little bit. I'll just talk a little bit about the ARNIP because it's, I guess the first part of the explanation that I have for you on the budget is that KiwiRail is not baseline funded. We receive no government payment for our base business. What we do receive is the ARNIP and Metro overdue renewals money. The ARNIP is for maintaining the network. It's not for that. We do some improvement programs, so there have been some safety improvement programs that we run, but the whole of the money that we get is all about maintaining and renewing the parts of the network so that we have a resilient and reliable rail service. So guided by the GPS, as you will know, the busiest and most productive parts of the existing rail network are prioritised, as are the metros. The busiest and most productive parts of the existing network include the Golden Triangle. Not the only thing that's in there, but that includes the Golden Triangle. So we do prioritise work that needs to be done for maintenance and renewals as part of the ARNIP. The key benefits, obviously, around the benefits of rail, so contribution to economic growth and productivity, reliability in the passenger routes, tourism routes and freight routes, and particularly on those priority routes. So the main trunk line is a key priority. In the South Island, obviously the main trunk line down there is also a key priority. We do have a safety improvements that we put through the program. As I said, there's limited funding for those, but we do prioritise them. And in this ARNIP, I think it's been the Ngaruawahia Bridge, Matamata fencing and other like improvements, and then quite a few level crossing safety improvements. Some of that is just signage, but some of that can be more intensive programs if funding allows. Our key aims as we progress our ARNIPs is to grow our maturity around greater value for money and maximise the emissions reductions that we get. Next slide, thank you. Okay, so we just received 1.075 billion announced in the budget. That's for our financial year 2028 and 29 and 30. So it's the 1st of July 2028 through to the 30th of June 2030. So that takes us through 3 years of a program. So as you can do the math, as I can, it's something like 400 million, a bit less than 400 million by the time you put a little bit of tuck on the top of that per year. We've had $400 million a year for the last 2 ARNIPs. So we've actually kind of decreased our funding. If you take it in a real world, costs go up, but the funding doesn't go up, it stays the same. But we've improved our efficiency. So trying to get benefit through making the dollar go further. The longer period of funding absolutely helps drive that because it gives us the ability to plan well in advance, to lock in more efficient and effective programs of work and to work our way through all of the initiatives that we have, particularly through engineering advances, etc., that should then bring that future benefit. So, for instance, I talked about the bridge entombing program that we've got going at the moment, which next meeting we will be going through in some detail. That program has halved the cost per metre of renewing bridges, wooden bridges, timber bridges. And that's really important because, like yourselves, we have tons of bridges. There's lots and lots and lots of them, and many of them are very, very old and end of life. And it's always a challenge to keep those being renewed through the ARNIP because there's only so much money and we have to spend it across track, across bridges, across structures, across, other turnouts, etc., etc. So basically the 3-year ARNIP, the current ARNIP is in progress. We have 1 more year of it to go. So that's a fully funded ARNIP and we've got 1 more ARNIP funded. So we're really excited about that. Having that much funding secured for our works programs is critical and it enables us to plan our heavy plant. All the plant you see out on the rail network is all paid for by the ARNIP. And the ARNIP pays for the people who have to go and do the work, obviously, as well, right? As I said, no baseline funding. There's no money outside of this that comes to KiwiRail. Everything else is paid for through our freight business, or alternately, if it's metros, there's co-funding from the councils that run metro services. We're awaiting the release of the next GPS. As we know, it's not coming now before the election, but we understand and we've had good insight from the Ministry of Transport and in collaboration with NZTA to the fact that there's very little likely to change for rail, as in the busiest and most productive parts of the network will be prioritised and the metros will be prioritised. I think value for money will become a stronger statement and certainly efficiency and all of those other good things will be nominated as underlying principles that we need to follow. So the key milestones that we have for the ARNIP 3 program, we are pretty much on a timetable of producing the draft ARNIP the middle of this year, which is, any minute now. And that will go through our board from an approval process, and it will be in line with the budget funding, which is the 1.075 billion that you see on the page there. And we will plan our ARNIP around that amount of funding. That amount of funding, whilst it's nominated by the government, it can of course change, as is the government's right. They can change their minds. We're not going to plan for them to change their minds, but we are improving our asset management processes. So if we do have a change in funding, let's say a windfall comes along at some point in the future, then we have the ability to ramp up the program or potentially to ramp it down if we have to, if that occurs. But planning the program to be delivered in line with the funding. We expect the final ARNIP to be complete and to the Minister in the last quarter of our financial year 2027. So that needs to go to the Minister. He actually needs to physically sign the investment program. For those of you who are really interested, you're welcome to go online. We have the investment program published. So 2024 to 27 investment program is online now. And it has been online for a while, in fact forever, and the previous program is also online. We will be publishing the final program once the Minister has approved it. So obviously we go through a number of phases, and the key phase is us developing this. So as you're developing your RLTP, we're developing the ARNIP, and we'll be talking together about how, in fact, we've got people in your planning workshops for your regional transport plans, and we'll be talking about what we are prioritising to help inform how we can work together on regional plans. We expect the Minister to sign off before 1 July 2027, because that's when we have to start the program, and that's really what releases the funding to KiwiRail. So it's held in tagged contingency until that point. And we'll, as I mentioned, we'll be engaging with your RTC workshopping processes, which I think our Steve Z has been included in, on the priorities in the program, such as the proposed level crossing work, which I'm going to touch on. Next slide, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Angela, did you have a quick question you wanted to raise now, or do you want to wait to the end? Wait to the end. Lisa, we will need to move quickly, only because we're at the end of our time already. But yeah, I'll let you carry on.
Sure. Okay. Well, this page pretty much covers what I've just said, except for the level crossing update, just to say we have been embarking on a program of signing up agreements to help manage maintenance and renewals at a cost sharing arrangement with councils. That's progressing. What it does need from us is a list of priorities by location, by region, by council, etc. And that's what we plan on releasing in the near future. So we'll be engaging through the REG process on that. Next slide, thank you. Okay, very quick freight update. The National Freight Demand Study has started, and NZTA will talk about that more. We are participating in the study invited by NZTA, so looking to establish methodology at this stage, and Deloitte have been appointed to do that. So we're hopeful that will make a difference to the prioritisation of freight in the network, and we'll be having better joined up conversations about road versus rail within that. Methodology report comes out in August, and the National Freight Demand Study will be utilising the new methodology will be later in the year, or I guess it could be 2027. Next slide. I think that might be us. Is that everything?
Thanks, Lisa. Hey, I'm just mindful. Members haven't seen these slides, so what we will do following this is we will circulate these just so we can. It's a bit hard to having gone through it so quickly. And I think, Lisa, what we might do next time too is allocate a bit more time for your item. Because I think there are some really interesting things, especially around that national freight. That's going to come later this year. I suspect there'll be quite a few queries around that. Anyway, we'll head to our speaking. We've got Angela first.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Thanks for your presentation. You just mentioned with the GPS, could you just clarify what you said around what you understand around the timing of that?
And look, NZTA are probably better placed. Andrew's probably got some better words than I do, because we don't directly officially get engaged in that process until the minister has confirmed the draft, and that hasn't happened. My understanding, and Andrew, please feel free to chime in when you come to time, but it's my understanding is we may not have a draft GPS before the election. I think it's likely to come after. To our mind, that doesn't necessarily matter, because if you change the government, you change the GPS. That seems to be a thing. And we are in the middle of the current GPS. So it's not like the GPS has expired. It's current and in progress until the end of FY27, so to the end of June 2027. So yeah, that's our understanding on timing. As I say, NZTA may be more up to speed than KiwiRail at this stage.
There's no public position on timing changing at the moment. The minister hasn't come out and said that publicly. We're just working toward waiting for some form of announcement of when it may actually come. We'd probably expect it to have been here by now, the draft GPS, but it isn't. So we just have to kind of go with what we've got until then.
Yeah, thank you. I've just got one more question for you, Lisa. Given the investment through ARNIP as maintenance, generally, what is the current status and timeline of electrification planning through the Waikato, and what investment or policy signals would be needed to move it from business case to delivery?
Yeah, so the process for those big new infrastructure projects, which is essentially what that is, as is Appendale to Southdown, as is many other projects, the process for us is to go to government and ask for money for the next stages of the project. At this time, we don't anticipate implementation funding being considered for budget 2027. We're in planning. We have next phases confirmed internally and planned, and I'm happy for Walter to come back and talk to that if you would like at the next meeting or the following. We need to express interest. So our board prioritises our program. We then go through an expression of interest process, which involves the Treasury and the Ministry of Transport, because we don't have funding to pay for these things. Below rail, big projects get paid for by Crown funding. So we would apply for Crown funding, and in 2027, in May, we would find out whether or not that was successful. So Minister of Finance has to agree to invite us. Officials obviously give advice on that. So really our process now is to line up our program and get the next phases confirmed, go through an EOI process, hopefully be invited by the Minister of Finance to budget 27, and that will then produce enough information for us to be looking for implementation funding for the following budget. That's our current plan for that program.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Jeanette.
Now, this doesn't directly relate to Waikato region, but it does. It's an interregional situation. Looking at your map that you had at the start, thank you for your presentation, Lisa. It was really good. But it also highlighted that forgotten highway railway line is still listed there as an unused route. Is that technically restorable as a route in the future?
Look, I don't know the answer to that question. That's one for our infrastructure guys, but I'm happy to get an answer for you and send it through so that you've got that. We have a series of lines that are no longer used. Some of them are what we call mothballed. What that means is that we can take rail vehicles through them. The line is still in place and able to be used. Others are disused lines, and they may not be safe. So we've got a line, Napier to Wairoa, which was severely damaged in the last weather events. Obviously, we don't send funding in that direction. We need to use it on the most productive parts of the network. So those, then we struggle to get them back to being operational. So I don't know the exact status of that particular line, and I will find out for you. But yeah, you know, depending, we will do minimal amount of work, safety-related work on those lines only, in line with the GPS and the direction that we have on how we spend our money.
So that route goes from Tamaranui through to Stratford, and therefore provides an alternative freight route So when we're talking about the issues with State Highway 3, it would be really good if there was a holistic conversation, because, you know, railway lines obviously also brilliant for reducing emissions, and electrified all the way through to Taumarunui from this end. So just wondering how on earth we get holistic conversations, because that includes Taranaki and Horizons as well.
Yeah, let me follow up on that, and I'll find out if there are any conversations happening at the moment and how we can get the RTC involved in those, or if not, what needs to happen for that conversation to take place. I'll come back to you.
Final question, Mike.
Just on that, Jeanette, yeah, look, 20 years ago, that was a no due to bridges and tunnel issues. And I doubt it's got any better in the last 20 years.
All right, that might have killed that one very quickly. Okay, thank you, Mike, for that insight. All right, okay, so we've got one. Oh, Anthony, sorry.
Yeah, just out of interest really, is that total amount of that budget, is that spent on refurbishment and maintenance of the existing network, or does some of that go towards extending the network as well?
There's very little funding available for extending. We're not meant to be we don't have the funding to be able to actually do that, as in it's really a reasonably small amount of money for the size of the network, and we do need to focus in on making sure the network is reliable and resilient. We do tend to prioritise safety-related programs from an improvement perspective, as opposed to new lines. Obviously, new lines are incredibly expensive, and they're not things that you can do easily. Some of the ARNT money is put towards, as has happened with Golden Triangle, towards those more strategic planning, what we call future of rail work. So there is a little bit of money that's allocated there, but again, not a significant amount. And some of the money does go towards the network, the metro network, which is obviously KiwiRail operates freight trains through the metros to get to the ports and to get to the centre of the city. So that's, you know, we need to contribute to that as well. So yeah, in reality, there's not much opportunity for investing in new renewals. Are really the focus in a new sense of getting assets right up to standard and able to be resilient for some time. So yeah, we can happy to look at any specific ones to get you a status through, and Gary can report back on that next month if there's anything in particular, but there's nothing in our work list that I know of at the moment.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, can I have someone please to move and second the update from KiwiRail? Angela and Mike, all in favour? Carried, thank you. Okay, our next item is the NZTA regional update, as well as the tolling paper. So I'd just like to welcome, we've got Angela and David, is it?
Angela and David, yes, I have brought guests.
Thank
today.
you, Andrew.
You don't want a quick 5-minute break for anyone that needs to?
We are going to have a break straight after this. Yeah.
We'll do that. Thank you. I'll run through my slides then as quick as possible, or probably the national ones I'll flick through a bit quicker, and then we'll do the regional ones. It's not as big as we normally would, and it's not maintenance season right now either, which is useful, but I want to give these guys good time given they've come from Auckland, just to pick up on that conversation we had recently around the interest in time of use tolling as well. So if we go to the next slide, please. In terms of the national stuff, and you've got these slides anyway, just some process around NLTP development. We're working with all your teams around those timeframes at the moment. Move to the next one, please. Been around all the councils with NZTA inductions since you were elected as well. So thanks for hosting. We've all talked about FAR rates. I think probably one council hasn't requested an increase in that, but this is just to let you know we are looking and reviewing that process at the moment, which is just part of the regular process ahead of that NLTP development. Moving on. The SHIP proposal, so our own RCA best foot forward in terms of what we think needs to be funded on the state highway network in the 2027 and onward period is being put together at the moment. I haven't had oversight of what is falling into that at the moment too, but we will have been working with your council officers again on that as well. Board. Yeah, I think I've covered off the ship. Next one, national ticketing solution. So I'm sure Phil and team have been engaged in discussions on this with our team. Bay of Plenty, which obviously falls into my patch as well, is on the Q1 for next year. So we look at Motu Move being rolled out at the moment in Greater Christchurch and onwards toward the Waikato in that final tranche. So I think at some point it would be good to get the RTC across this in a bit more detail.
Absolutely. I understand that the agency is looking to do a roadshow of that. So if we could line that up with one of our meetings, that would be fabulous.
That would be very useful. Yeah. Next one, please. Maintenance contracts. So we have, as of May, entered into a new way of delivering our maintenance contracts with our suppliers. The suppliers in the Waikato, although re-tendering was undertaken, did not change, but the contract format itself, moving away from the NOC contracts, has changed. So it does give us a lot more flexibility in what we can ask those contractors to achieve for us out there on the networks. And we'll see how that progresses over the rest of the year. There's very much the setup phase at the moment. It's been a huge internal change process for our maintenance and operations team as well. And there's been shuffling and restructuring as a result of that internally to accommodate the way we need to manage these contracts going forward. Next one. I think I've talked to you all about NZTTM at council induction, so I won't go into detail here, but there are some approaching deadlines for councils around that as well. Next one, average speed cameras. We've just flicked on 2 sets of these in the Bay of Plenty, so Whakatane and the Matata Straits in Tumanui, south of Rotorua. I really look forward to probably in a year's time us reflecting on how those are actually reducing DSIs around the country. We had a very significant speed at the Matata one in the testing days just prior to them being turned on, which I think I mentioned at LGNZ Zone 2 for those that were there. And if we're able to nullify that from happening in the future through these high-risk sites, then that will go a long way toward some proven safety measures being successful. Next one, please. Community driver testing expansion. You'll just see a couple of sites, a couple of providers there on that second to bottom bullet point for the Waikato. So Blue Light and Waitomo Christian Fellowship Trust being brought in to provide that driver testing support service. Happy again to dive into that in future if people are interested in it, but this is targeting those areas where it was much harder to gain access to getting a license.
Great initiative. Yeah.
Next one, please. Hey, there's been a bit of weather this year too. I think we all know what's been hit in the Waikato in particular, but also the Bay of Plenty as well. It feels the extremities of our regions have been really targeted. So, amazing multi-agency responses, ultimately things we can improve on, things we've done well, things we could have done better. We're still very much evolving, in particular with our process around the Waiaweka Gorge over in the Bay of Plenty, where it felt like every time it rained or there was an orange rain warning, we had to close a significant freight route. So that's been adjusted again over the weekend, and we were able to remain open despite an orange rain warning quite successfully, because I haven't heard anything otherwise at the moment on a Monday. Next one, please. Don't think I need to dwell on that. We'll move to regional update. So this update was done prior to the budget being announced. So I guess we do need to celebrate for the Waikato, the funding that has come toward Cambridge to Piarere section of the Waikato Expressway, a place close to my heart. I grew up in Piarere, and great for our regional teams. So we're going to have an active RONS being constructed as early as the end of this year, start of next year. much like we've got in the Bay of Plenty with Takatimu North Link. It'd be great to be able to actually take the RTC and see the site as it's being developed at some point as well. A fairly useful site visit just to see the reality of that investment, but the safety improvement that will provide for that section as well. I know Mike's been quoted in the papers on things like that recently. It's great to get a positive outcome for the Waikato, because as was said before, there hasn't been the funding put towards roads of national significance in other areas, and we are still awaiting government prioritisation of how some of those will come out in future, including ones like Southern Links, which we don't have any further updates on at this point either. The resilience funding, it feels like it's been a huge year this year. As I mentioned before, a lot of events, particularly with Waiaweka, which our regional team for Waikato and Bay of Plenty cover, Coromandel, Karangahaki Gorge, Awakino, which we've touched on, which falls into the Waikato region, but it's under a slightly different maintenance contract with the central region, and obviously impacts Taranaki a lot more, but not insignificant in terms of the impact for Waikato region as well. So, and on top of that, the Parongia and Waipa o Tarahonga issue that we had back in February too. So great to see the funding announced for Coromandel, for Awakino. The Kitty Stream Bridge was one of the details that came through, which is, I think, one of the last bits that needs to be achieved from the Waiho River catchment proposals from back in the day. So lifting up and rebuilding a new bridge south of the Kopu Hikawai turnoff on 26, as well as sites around the Coromandel Peninsula. So detail yet to come on all of that. It takes a bit of time for the budget funding to actually flow through. We find out at a pretty similar time what's been announced as everyone else, and resourcing internally needs to be stepped up or reprioritised to allow us to accommodate for what we have ahead of us too. But again, very positive, particularly compared to some other areas. Next one, thanks. Oh, speed management. I knew I had a slide in there. We do have some proposals for speed reviews coming out shortly. I don't think I can share the details of those at this forum, but we do have them in these areas around Coromandel, Matamata, Whatawhata, which we'll need to talk about, Mike, at some point, Parongia, Tikuiti and Karapiro. So the way our team operates is, yes, we do have small resource for speed reviews internally at NZTA for state highways. As a road controlling authority, we have a long list of areas that have been raised by the community that are reviewed as to whether under the legislation a speed review is able to be undertaken. So these will be the next cabs off the rank effectively in terms of locations. Keep raising these with me when you're hearing them from your constituents. I know, Mike, we had a discussion about one in Te Awamutu recently that when I put that to the team to review, it got a pretty positive response and will have been added to that list now for a wider consultation consideration. We do have, as I've mentioned, limited resourcing around these, but it's good to progress the ones that are particular bugbears, and there's some that are difficult to fit within legislation in terms of our ability to actually undertake a review. And I'd suggest White's Road that we heard about today, and Elvisi, you and I can pick up that conversation after this. Perhaps there's some difficulties with that site, but the presence of public at these forums helps add weight to the discussions that I can take back internally as well. Next one, I think we've moved to tolling. So this is a presentation that the committee has requested. We have had Angela Mortlock, who has kindly given her time, given she's actually in a completely different role now, but was our tolling expert. She's come down from Auckland, along with David Mitchell, who is one of our principal transport planners out of Auckland as well. And they've heard the conversation today, but I'm sure we'll be happy to take some questions after this as we dive a little into some of the changes around tolling and what we can and can't do at the moment. And yes, Cambridge to Piarere will need to be considered for tolling in terms of the offline section that will cut in behind the hills. But ultimately that's going to be a minister's decision and approval to go to consultation, which will happen sometime in the near future, I imagine, in terms of getting a minister's way forward on that. So I'll hand over to you guys. You might want to introduce yourselves a bit better than I did.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm a Principal Transport Planner at the agency, as Andrew mentioned. Over the past 3 years, I've worked on all of the RONs around the country in terms of preparing the various tolling assessments, and I'm also now involved in the national time of use guidance and dealing with Auckland Council as well, quite a lot on that side of it.
Sorry, I'm Angela Morlock. So I was the principal advisor for tolling over the last 3 years as well. So I would look after the program of tolling. David's definitely the technical lead, but we were driving all that work to get the assessments done on all the ones.
Okay, we'll shift on. I'll do the first few slides. We go to the next one. Yep. So this is really just a bit of a summary in terms of how road pricing works, and I'm sure you probably all be familiar with this. We've got the road user charges and fuel excise duty, with the government looking to move towards road user charges across the fleet. We've got the existing toll legislation, which is under the Land Transport Management Act, and there's the reform of that going through. We're actually probably expecting that to pass through the House in probably July or August. It's passed through the select committee stage. Angela will talk a little bit more about that, and I'll just talk about one particular aspect of it. In terms of the time of use legislation, that was passed into law last year and becomes active in November this year. And as I said, I'm working with Auckland Council, and I think that's the only council we're working with, and sort of actively at this stage anyway. Move on to the next slide. A little sort of tolling and time of use 101 really. And yeah, please excuse me if this is information that you're already sort of well aware of. So time of use is really, it's about a variable price across a congested part of the network, and that's really the main thing that it's designed to actually do. It's about improving traffic flow, and it's a combination of vehicle numbers and traffic speeds, and also network productivity. That's what the legislation sort of effectively calls out. Move on to the next slide. So tolling and time of use have quite different philosophies. So tolling is about paying for a piece of infrastructure. You identify that, and then the tolls recover part of that cost, and that obviously depends on the toll itself, the length of time, the cost of the infrastructure. Time of use, as I said, is very much about looking at perhaps a wider network response to congestion and to issues with traffic flow and sort of network productivity. Tolling typically applies 24/7. It's all day. It might have different charges. Some of the ones, or the toll roads we've got at the moment have a single charge. What we're looking at doing is having variable charges across the day. Time of use really is about charging when there is congestion. If the roads are flowing, then a time of use would typically not apply. The way that they're actually established is the same. So they both use a order in council that has to go through the minister and then cabinet and to the governor general, and done that way. Couple of interesting things there. So tolls are governed by NZTA. So we administer, issue the notices on those, maintain the system. Time of use will be the same in terms of the issuing of the charges. So NZTA will continue to do that. That's spelled out in the legislation, but the governance of it is quite different. There's a scheme board which has voting rights split between the council, the initiating council, and NZTA, with an independent chair, and then the minister has various other options, which is all sort of listed under the Act. One of the key differences between toll roads and time of use schemes is that toll roads must have an untolled alternative route. Time of use does not. So that's a really key
key difference in there. Go to the next slide. I'll just talk a little bit just about the revenue sort of side of it. So revenue out of toll schemes and time of use schemes follows I guess a similar sort of format in that you have to pay for the operations and maintenance of the scheme itself. So that's collecting the tolls, actually maintaining the equipment, changing out cameras, gantries, all that sort of thing. But they can all pay for the planning, design, construction, operations, and maintenance of the projects. The key difference is really where the money goes to. And as I said, tolling, it goes back into repaying part of whatever loan you've taken out to actually build that infrastructure in the first place. Time of use, it goes again to the operations and maintenance of the scheme, but then any excess funds from that, any excess revenue gets split in a investment agreement between the local council and the government. So in effect, you would say time of use can make a profit and that there's excess money, whereas tolling cannot. So tolling can only recover the costs for which the ordering council sets out. That's really important. We go to the next slide. Just a little bit about the timeframes. Both tolling and time of use typically take sort of 12 to 24 months, and as I said, follow a similar sort of a process through to getting the ordering council. 12 to 24 months in terms of the analysis side of it, following implementation, and that's quite important. It is the local authorities that initiate the scheme in the first place, or the time of use scheme in the first place. And then you're typically looking for time of use at probably a 12-month implementation period. It's really about setting up cameras in an operating centre and the back office sort of systems. And just one more from me. Just a very quick one in terms of how time of use schemes can operate. There's typically three different setups, cordons, areas, and corridors. So cordons, as you can imagine, is literally a ring around one part of the network, and people get charged to go in and go out at different charges and different times of the day. So you might charge somebody to come into, let's say there was a cordon around Hamilton Central, you might charge people in the morning to come in and in the afternoon to go out, but you wouldn't necessarily charge the opposite direction. Area schemes are much more complicated. They charge people for the amount that they actually drive inside of a specified area. So it lends itself to a sort of a GPS-based system. It's not used anywhere in the world at the moment, but there are a couple of schemes that are looking at it. So yeah, very, very complicated sort of a scheme. And corridor schemes are just look at particular sections of road. So the issue with that, of course, is that if you charge one particular piece of road, people will tend to move to a different piece of road. But that is a scheme. The one on the right is actually Singapore, which uses a lot of sort of corridor tolling rather than having a cordon around it. And I think Angela will do the next couple of slides.
So my slides are really on tolling as it is in New Zealand at the moment. So we haven't had much change since 2016 when the Tauranga Eastern Link was added and Takatimu Drive. But we've got 3 toll roads in New Zealand at the moment. They generate about 40 million a year. So Northern Gateway is 20 million and the other 2 make up the other 20, about close to 10 each. They all have end dates. So we've got a time-bound 35-year scheme to recover money for the construction of the roads. The earliest one to be paid back will be Takatimu Drive, which will be around 2030. We've got 3 new toll roads approved by government, which is Penlink, which is north of Auckland, Takatimu North Link from Tauranga, and Otaki to North Levin are the 3 that will be progressing next. And if I can just go to the next slide. So we've got tolling reform coming in. This is the first change to tolling legislation in some time. And as David said, it will be made law later this year. So this is going to enable corridor tolling. So where a new road has to be a new road is is going to be built, and we can identify that there's going to be benefits beyond the new road, so on existing road as well, we could identify that as a corridor, and that corridor could be tolled. So you might not need to have your toll point within the new construction, but there is quite a bit around there about how would you determine benefit of it for the existing road, and that would be things like travel time savings or safety or congestion relief. So there is an ability with this tolling reform to toll an existing road, but again, it needs to be attached and identified as providing benefit from that new build. We will have the ability to mandate that heavy vehicles need to use the toll roads and not the free alternates. And where there is funding, where we have identified that the free alternate route is going to be cost prohibitive for the local government to support, the local council to support, because we've put more, or the toll road has put more vehicles onto the free alternate. There will be an opportunity for some of the tolling revenue to support that free alternate. We'll be adjusting the toll rates every 3 years, every year now, rather than every 3 years for CPI increases. And there's a change in there as well. So the person who is the registered vehicle owner will have to pay the toll, not the driver. At the moment, there's a stack deck process that is quite expensive to maintain. That will be removing, because we will now just be able to charge the registered driver, the registered owner of the vehicle.
Thanks,
I think we are open for questions.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Okay, we've got Mike Kerr, Mike Pettit, and then Duncan.
This one's for Andrew. Thanks for the report. It's really good. Some interesting stuff in there. I'll be interested to see how your cameras work, might be useful. Just, has there been thought to bar rate with the amalgamations coming up, what that might look like on a regional basis? How would you have you started looking at that yet, or is it?
Okay. No. We are still trying to find our way to understanding the impact of the reform, proposed legislation, etc., on transport itself. We don't have much detail at this point, but I mean, yeah, Brave New World ultimately will impact land transport in some way. It'll impact RTCs as well as all that kind of stuff if proposals go through. So we're happy to be a part of the journey when it does happen, but not at this point.
Thank you.
Right, thanks. That you've actually, I think, answered my question, and it was going to be around between Cambridge and Piarili, the existing State Highway 1, which is a pretty significant piece of infrastructure, and a little bit worried as a TA taking that over at some point in time. But you really alluded to the fact that we can put a case. Do we put the case forward, or who does that to actually say, hey, some of that tolling, if it is tolled, goes to a TA to try and maintain that massive piece of infrastructure?
So the detail on that hasn't been agreed yet. It's still going, the wording is still being discussed through the government process. But yeah, there would be a flow that we would go through.
Yeah, all right. Well, it's good to hear, and I think fair and reasonable. And just off track a little bit, but variable speed zones, and actually Gary Raymond's just brought it up really indirectly, is outside Mystery Creek, which I think 60 k's at the moment. That would be a good place to look at a variable speed zone around events, obviously, rather than just be 60 k all the time. It sort of wouldn't make sense. Yeah, it is a local road. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. And so I didn't realise 35 years is toll can only stay in place for 35 years.
That's what we have in place at the moment with the order in council. We state how long the toll will be in place for and how much the revenue will contribute to the debt repayment. It's part of the proposal that goes forward. For Penlink, that toll revenue will be used for maintenance and operations of the road. So that one doesn't have a 35-year end date.
Right.
So it does depend on the order in council.
All right, and the last one, and it's a bit pie in the sky, but along that road corridor sort of aspect, the existing expressway, which goes from like Mercer Way all the way to Cambridge. So what you're really saying is at any point somewhere along that road, a new toll could be introduced to fit in with the new 16 k's of expressway that's going to be built. That's what you're saying?
So when we would do the tolling assessment, and again, we don't have the final wording of how the corridor will be described, but we could say the most, because often when you're looking at the start and end point, when you're bound by the new road, there might be a much more logical free alternate route turn off, or you might be able to capture a much higher usage on the road if your toll points were at a different location. So we would put a proposal together utilising the new reform legislation to say this road would function better if the toll points were outside of the new build. And it might generate more revenue for the road, or it might provide a safer free alternate. So we would put that case together and we would show where that existing road is getting benefit from the new build.
Yeah, I mean, just as a side point, anything pushing more traffic through Cambridge would not be welcome. Yeah, it just wouldn't make any sense. We're trying to get rid of traffic.
Thanks, Mike. Duncan.
Well, yeah, look, a basic criticism of these time of use charging mechanisms or congestion charging, I use them, that I've heard from places like Singapore is that it's a mechanism to clear the roads so that rich people can drive their cars around. I mean, how do you respond to that?
Oh, I think we just look at the legislation and the implications from the legislation, and it's about traffic flow and network productivity. So if you can speed up cities, we're not looking to restrict any trips. And in fact, one of the key aspects when we're looking at time of use schemes is about the alternative modes, public transport, walking and cycling networks, and making one of the things that say we've learned out of schemes like London, for instance, is that they did really significant improvements to the public transport services so that when it was turned on, people had realistic alternatives. So it's about encouraging trips, but perhaps more about changing modes or changing times that people travel, those sort of things, so that we get a better and more consistent traffic flow right across the network.
Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, really interesting presentation. Thank you. You mentioned, Angela, in your presentation about the registered driver being responsible, registered owner rather than the driver being responsible. With the NZTA app, is that sort of the one-stop shop for managing all of those things?
It's my new job. So at the moment, tolling isn't part of the digital app, but certainly, of course, we would, that will be the pipeline to make it as simple and as effective and efficient for people to be able to pay all road pricing. Yeah. But at the moment, we just have payments on the website via an account, which the majority of people use, or at service stations.
Okay. Yeah. I'd welcome some. Yeah.
Yes.
A one-stop shop would be great. Yeah, that would make sense. And to your points around incentivizing, if you've got time of use charging, then you would increase your investment in PT priority as well to encourage the mode shift as well. So yeah, great work. Thank you.
Mirash.
Yeah, Andrew remind me of one. He must have heard me say it about 100 times, I think. Interestingly, New Zealand has 3 existing toll roads, and Italy have 35. They've got bloody good roads over there, really good. Sit on them, have 100 feet, yeah, no problem at all. Really good. The couple of things. So the time of use, I'm a little bit uneasy on that, because I mean, if you're trying to reduce congestion, but if you take looking out this window, for example, you've got school hours, you've got university hours, you've got people coming to work and going home from work. Is it that if we told them to try and reduce that congestion, it then becomes a little bit more awkward, if you like, people that are using it on a regular basis. I still think the best one, and I keep harping on about it, and it's very easy, is the Bombay Hills. And I believe there's even cameras already on there. So, you know, my thoughts were a charge going in, charge going out, whether it's $4 a vehicle, doesn't matter. $4 in goes to Auckland North Roads, $4 out, Waikato, Coromandel, Roding. And it's not going to stop you using it. You know what I mean? You're not going to look for that alternative way around up through Clevedon or whatever, you know, through Koiawa to save $4. And you're going up into Auckland, just, you know, staying up there's like $300-400 a night, you know, for example. Then, you know, I think there's some relatively easy ones like that one, for example. Then you could also do one down sort of Taupo Way or whatever and go, you know, south. You could, the Kaimais is another one, but also, you know, pinch points like, say, for example, the new Kopu Bridge, brilliant, and the roundabout, brilliant. And of course, it's seasonal too. You got a lot more traffic in the summertime periods, but, you know, I use it just about every second weekend going up Coro. But anyway, like, would it hurt to pay $2 on the Kopu Bridge? Activates as you go over it. I don't think people would mind so much. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be huge amounts, but it's something. And then that money can go to maintaining, like I said, you know, earlier today, you know, we don't have money to respond to these events. Imagine if we did have a pool of money, you know, a couple of $100 million in a kitty, because it adds up really fast. You know, they should have still had a toll on the Auckland Harbour Bridge. It was ridiculous they took it off. They'd have another brand new one right beside it as we speak. So, you know, those are the simple things. You know, the time of use, I can see what you're trying to do, but I think there could be, it might not achieve what want to achieve unless people start, or businesses start altering start times and finish times. But that's going to have complications too, you know. So, yeah, that side of it needs a lot more thinking, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the legislation unless we're building a new road. And yeah.
That's what I was saying before. Is that something our committee can then promote with the ministers or whatever and say, here's a solution?
Yeah. So with the tolling reform, I guess, was an opportunity for existing roads to be looked at, and the availability was always to be attached to a new road. So yeah, you would need to put a case forward.
And ultimately, you can decide what you want to advocate to a minister on, 100%. But I mean, this legislation's now embedded, isn't it? Or is it? There's no opportunities to.
I don't know. Some details are still being.
Yeah, some details are still being worked through, but it's been through the first reading in the select committee, so it's going back for the second reading out to the House. So I think that's, yeah, that submission part of it's been completed.
I may have missed that opportunity.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Right. We are going to receive the report, please, for NZTA. Then we're going to take a quick break of 5 minutes, and we're going to have presentations from Duncan and Claire, who's here today, and then we'll break for lunch. Okay. Does that sound like a bit of a plan? So just to receive the report, please, can I have a mover and a seconder? Thanks, Alvisa. Thanks, Duncan. All in favour? Carried. Okay. And we'll just have a 5 minute.
I was just going to say these guys will stay for lunch,
so
they can have some more informal discussions with you if you need.
Yes, yeah, as I was going to say, please stay for lunch. That will be about 12, probably 12:45. I think we'll be breaking for lunch around about. Okay, everybody, let's be back here. Just a quick relief break, 12:15, please. And yeah, we'll just hear from our two presenters. Thank you.